Right, here we go. This is going to be fun. What is up, Handstand Army? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jonathan and I'm a handstand and a movement coach. And today I'm going to be showing you how I teach my students to do the one-arm handstand. Any coach has their particular method in how they teach a skill, but a good coach is able to take different techniques that they might not necessarily use themselves and apply it to that individual. Everyone's anatomy is so beautifully different. How can we expect the exact same approach to work on each individual? It's just not going to happen. I myself did not have a hand balancing teacher, so I had to work out a lot of this stuff myself, but I was fortunate enough to have some epic hand balancers chip in and give me some amazing advice on my journey. And because we've got such a pandemic of plagiarism in the movement and hand balancing community, I'm going to be sure to reference them every time I use one of their cues in this tutorial. And with all that being said, let's get started. So here's some really important information and prerequisites that I believe you need to have before you start the one-arm handstand. Now, with most of my students, if they have a stupidly consistent 30-second handstand, they might be doing some one-arm preps. But most of my students, and I very much recommend this for you, you want to be pushing the 1 minute mark in a straight handstand before you start working on your one-arm. I also recommend you have something that I call handstand intelligence. Now this just simply means you know where you are in the space. A lot of people know their lefts and their right, but when they're in a handstand they have no idea where they are. Drills like leg flourishes and leg movements are a great indicator to see if you're ready for the one-arm handstand. So where do I feel the weight in my hands? Well, it's changed over the years. But currently, for me, it sits really nicely when it's 70% in the heel of the hand and around 30% in the fingers. The reason I like this is because it stops my forearms from burning out too quickly. But the other thing is it takes a lot of pressure off the wrist. It's almost identical to how you stand on your feet. The weight goes through the heels of the foot and then dissipates into the toes. If I put too much weight into my toes, I can then expect my calf to start cramping up. It's the exact same principle with your forearm in relation to balancing with your fingers in a handstand. Now let's imagine this blue dot is where my center of mass sits in a two-handed handstand. In a one-handed handstand, I want to transfer that blue dot over towards the thumb. As you can see, I have tucked in my thumb, and that's because I found by increasing the surface area of my palm and pressing the weight into this particular area, it gives me way more control in my one-arm handstand. Now a lot of people end up transferring their weight over into their fingertips like this. This is one of the most common reasons I see why people overbalance in their handstand and end up cartwheeling out. I always recommend trying to keep the weight as close to the base of the wrist as possible. So this brings me on to my next point. Should I use the entirety of my arm to balance my one arm? So yes and no. This is where I've created something that I call the traffic light system. As you can see here, the green symbolizes the hand. You can definitely use your hand to correct in a one-arm handstand. Here we have the orange, this is your elbow. Ideally not, but you can get away with this. And then we have the shoulder. This is the one part of the arm that I really recommend you do not correct from, because if you learn to correct here, it will make the rest of your one arm incredibly unstable. So of course you want to use your hands to balance your one arm, but not too much. So sometimes I get my students to draw a little dot on their hand. This represents where the weight sits in their one arm. I then get them to draw a circle around it, and they want to imagine that they're trying to keep that dot inside that circle. This would be known as micro or small corrections. Too often do I see people balancing all over their hand. These are macro corrections. If you imagine the hand is the foundation of your one-arm handstand, so if your corrections are crazy, going all over the place, then this is going to ricochet up your handstand, making it incredibly shaky. Right, B-boy, chill your beans. You do not want to learn to balance your one arm using your legs, your hips, or your knees. This is just going to result in a very inconsistent one arm. You want to make sure that your legs are locked, your knees are locked, your toes are pointed. You are pushing up through your shoulder and balancing through nothing other than your hand. Now, in this one arm handstand, what we're going to do is we're going to go in a bit closer. Now, this mark here symbolizes my center of mass. That is the point in which your body rotates, and your center of mass wants to be above your points of balance. For me, I always feel the weight going down the inside of my arm when I'm doing a one arm handstand. One of the most common mistakes I see is that people try and bring the weight too far over to the outside of the arm, and this just results in losing balance.
So for me personally, it's very unorthodox, but I like to have a slight internal rotation from my hip. So as you can see, I'm balancing on top of my right arm there, and my right hip is slightly turned in. You can see from the feet, slightly in the middle. Really important you don't overcook this. It's just a minor internal rotation. For me, it just sits way nicer on top of the shoulder, and it's just way easier to balance.
Now I'm going to show you how we want to release our arm when we go into the one arm handstand. So here I'm going to bring my arms above my head, and as you can see, I've got this box shape. Now I want to keep those blue dots in the same place. They represent my shoulders. As I release one arm and go to take it off, I'm opening one side of the box but keeping the shoulders in the exact same position. So as you see here, I'm transferring onto my fingertips, and I'm trying really hard to bring my arm up and pivot around my shoulder joint. I don't want to move this line. What you'll see time and time again is as people bring the arm off, they'll also lift the shoulder, disrupting this line. Once you disrupt the shoulder line, you disrupt the hip line, and this results in losing balance. Here are the 3 stages of arm release I teach my students. Stage 1, we have long arm extension. Please don't move on to stage 2 until you can do 3 to 5 seconds in this arm release. Here we have stage 2 at this right angle, and I call this high extension. You want to be hitting over 10 seconds in this arm release before you move on to stage 3. And stage 3, finally we have the full one arm. This is really hard to hold, so yeah, enjoy this.
So as we dive into the beginning of your one arm journey, it's very important that I inform you that we are in fact going to start with the hardest one arm shape. Now this shape is known as full, Savaka, rocket, the straight one arm, the impossible shape. It is such an infuriating shape, even for me who has it really consistently, still have days where I just cannot do this shape. The reason it's so important is because with this shape, there is no cheat code. You have to learn good alignment and good technique to achieve this shape. It's also a lot harder because your center of gravity is further away from your point of balance. Now, I know an amazing hand balancer in London who told me that they spent an entire year just working on the full one arm. But the byproduct of this is after the year, not only could they do the full one arm, but they could do all the other shapes like straddle, tuck, stag, diamond, all these other ones.
The reason I don't teach a straddle one arm first is because when I see a lot of people learning this, they have this lateral compression here, in other words, a flag. And if a flag is part of your foundation when learning to one arm, you can expect this technique to carry over in all the other handstand shapes. Flagging also relies on a lot more strength and isn't as efficient to hold. I really recommend you make the foundation of your one arm training, keeping your torso nice and long throughout this movement. I also heavily recommend you spend 6 weeks to 3 months just working on this shape before going into the straddle one arm.
So tutorial time. These are the 6 most common drills that I give my students when they are learning the one arm handstand. Now remember, at any point in this process, you can make it a whole lot easier by opening your legs up into a straddle, but I really recommend that you stick in the full shape for as long as possible. Sticking in the full shape is just going to give you a better foundation for when you want to learn harder skills later on down the line. I also really recommend that you finish each stage and the requirements that I set before you go on to the next drill.
So this is where the fun begins. We're going to go into weight shifts. I'm just transferring the weight over onto one arm, but I am not going onto fingertips. I'm just going to build the strength in this position. You're going to do 10 sets of 10 seconds on each arm. Now, I recommend that you go up and do 1 rep of 10 seconds on one arm, come down and repeat until the sets and the reps are completed. So in this drill, you want to make sure you work up to 10 sets of 10 seconds on each side. Now, it's really important you don't rush this because you want to make sure you avoid all injury at all costs from your wrists, your elbows and your shoulders. If you rush this too quickly, it can result in injury. So chill your beans and enjoy the journey. Super common problem that I see, bringing the shoulder outside of the line of the wrist. So as you can see, there's this diagonal angle here. You really want to focus on keeping the shoulders above the wrists. This doesn't feel nice on the shoulders. It's incredibly hard to balance and it's just setting up very bad foundations. Fingertip support. Yeah, boy. This is where the fun happens. So I'm going to transfer over. I'm going to push up through my shoulder to create more space. By doing this, it's going to allow me to go onto my fingertips. And remember, I'm thinking length through my torso, avoiding all flagging if possible. Over the course of several months, I'm going to start removing fingers one at a time till I'm on one finger. I'm going to build up to 10 sets of 10 seconds, 1 rep on one arm at a time. Now please don't put the entirety of your body weight through one finger like this because you will break it and then you will sue me. When you have one finger on the floor, it is just there to support you, not your entire body weight. Now the 1 second shape is a drill I created to help you to find the exact same position every time you release your arm off the floor. The principle of this drill is the first shape you hit when your arm comes off dictates whether it's going to be a good hold or a bad hold. So by regularly training this drill, we're increasing our consistency of finding a strong, solid first position. I strongly believe that training the correct arm release should be a foundation to everyone's hand balance training. Here we have chair support. This is a banging exercise, fam. As you can see, I'm transferring over and I'm going into the 1 second shape. I'm then reaching out. This can be a chair, a pole, a table. It could be your nan for all I care. It can be anything. But what I am focusing on is keeping my shoulder in the correct position. For those free runners out there, you can also practice stepping into it like this. This is one of my favorite ways into it. It's a bit harder to get the shoulder in the exact position. So once you find the balance, you are then going to extend the arm. So same as previous drills, 10 sets of 10 seconds, 1 rep at a time. Here we have 1 to 5. Now this is essentially the same drill as the 1 second shape, but the objective is different. So I'm going to hit a one arm for 1 second. I'm going to come back. I'm then going to go back up. I'm going to do 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and then 5 seconds. But if I go wrong at any point, I start this exercise all over again. Now, like the 1 second shape, it is a consistency drill, but the stakes are slightly higher. Generally, my students get to 2 or 3 seconds pretty quickly, but the 4th and the 5th second become more of a mental challenge, knowing that if they go wrong, they have to start again. But what this does set up is a very strong, consistent entrance into their one arm shape. And of course, when 3 or 4 seconds start to become more consistent, then they will start to see longer holds occur more regularly. And then finally, baby cakes, we come in and land at holds for time. Now this is just trying to rep out some personal bests. Always trying to chase personal bests, because as your personal best increases, by default, so will your average hold time. Let's always push for personal bests. So there we go, those are the 6 most common drills that I use with my students when they are learning to one-arm handstand. Now what you're not getting here is me looking at your individual one-arm attempts to see where there might be some mistakes or cues missing. And that is where my online training might be something you want to consider. I work specifically with you as an individual on a personalized program to help you achieve this skill. Now I'm not promising you're going to get this skill in 6 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years, but it might help having a professional eye looking at it to see if there's anything that you might be missing. If you are interested in that, then please shoot over to my Instagram, drop me a message and we can go from there. If you're not interested in that, then I released a video a few weeks ago called the 5 reasons you still can't one-arm handstand. And there might be something in there that might grab your attention to why you're not succeeding with this skill. Once again, I want to give a massive shout out to this space, the Wild Box. You've been absolutely wonderful letting me come in here and film, and it's really appreciated. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye.